everyone, welcome back to Coffee with a Counselor Graduation Edition. My name is Jennifer and I am on the school-based team with North Range Behavioral Health, and I am back with you all this Tuesday afternoon to continue talking about our seniors this year. Last week we talked about how to establish a solid foundation of daily self-care as well as some coping skill options. And so today we're going to shift gears and start talking about different ways to practice accountability and time management. So go ahead and grab a cup of coffee or your beverage of choice, get comfortable, and let's have a chat. So seniors, with or without the tangible milestones that signify the end of high school and bring on that symbolic transition to adulthood, your future awaits. Whether you've decided to go to college, attend a trade school, travel, take some time off, pursue work, it's undeniable that you'll experience a huge shift in expectations and responsibilities. For some of you, this transition is a welcomed relief. For others, it's a terrifying jump without the same safety net. And for a lot of you, it's both. When we move out on our own, we become more independent, which comes with a lot of privileges as well as a lot of cautions. We must prepare ourselves to be accountable for our choices in a way that we may not have had to be yet. We no longer have the security or that safety net of our parents being able to wake us up if we sleep through our alarm in the morning, or to urge us to go to sleep at a reasonable hour in the evening. We lose a major checkpoint for many different aspects of our life. Is your homework done? Did you brush your teeth? Don't forget about your doctor's appointment tomorrow afternoon. That form you have to turn into Coach is on the fridge. Don't forget to take that in tomorrow. Even though all of these checkpoints, or dare I say for some naggings, may drive us absolutely crazy, they're also really well-established parts of our routines that have allowed us to make a habit of overlooking things or under-preparing, since we often avoid the consequences of forgetting something due to these external reminders. It hasn't been as imperative for us to be accountable for our own stuff, because if we forget, our parents are typically there to help us remember. So as we look forward to these transitions, how do we prepare ourselves to lose these reminders, to lose this assistance in our accountability? The first step is to take an inventory during our day of what counterbalances we have in place or that our parents have put into place for us. Even things as simple as putting our shoes on the shoe rack when we walk in the door instead of leaving them in the doorway for our siblings to trip over, to the bigger ticket items like really important appointments that we can't miss or reschedule. Once we know what we're used to, then we can figure out ways to replace those reminders and hold ourselves accountable instead. So maybe that means that we're using our phones, or we have a paper planner that we use to keep track of our assignments and our appointments, rather than our parents reminding us every day for the 3 days leading up to it. Maybe it means that we find a safe place to put our personal information that we often ask our parents for, such as social security numbers or insurance information, whether it's car or health. I know when I was a freshman in college, I would call my mom probably at least once a month to get my social security number. And there were a couple of situations where I missed out on some opportunities like donating blood, because as it turns out, our parents actually aren't at our beck and call all the time, even though sometimes they say that's their primary job. But anyway, so they're not always going to be available for us. So how do we make sure that what we need from them is available to us when we need it in those times where they may not be? As we look at the areas that we need to beef up our own accountability, it's important that we're honest with ourselves. Being fully and genuinely accountable for ourselves is a really vulnerable process that requires us to accept our humanness and embrace our mistakes, which can be a really uncomfortable place for us to be in. So it's important to know that every single one of us, as a human, has rooms to grow and ways that we can improve. And so as we acknowledge and identify these areas, we want to do so with self-compassion and a growth mindset rather than being critical or talking down on ourselves. We don't want to shame ourselves for the skills that we lack. We want to empower ourselves to facilitate and grow the skills that we need. Like accountability, time management is a critical skill to transitioning successfully out of high school. And I remember when I was a high school senior, time management felt like something that was thrown around a lot and often expected of me. And there was little instruction on how to do it. People were like, you need to have better time management. I was like, I don't know what that means. I don't know how to do that. I don't know where to start. And so today we're going to talk about some of the core skills that we can work on developing to be more effective with our time management. The first skill we're going to talk about is prioritization. So identifying what tasks are most important, most time sensitive, or that will require the most amount of our energy. One way I like to explain it is that on your plate, you've got a 64-ounce porterhouse steak to eat. And I promise this is not a challenge. It is physically impossible for you to eat that entire steak in one bite. And so instead of trying to eat it all in one bite and exhausting ourselves, we cut it down into bite-sized, more manageable pieces. Another way that I explain it, or an activity that I often do with my kids in session when we talk about setting our priorities, is I have a bag of stress balls and I have them hold their hands out like this. And for every task that they identify they have to do, whether it's a homework assignment, a call they have to return, a friend they have to text, for everything that's on their plate to do, I put a stress ball in their hand. Naturally, what starts happening as the hand fills up is that the stress balls start to fall off, because we can't hold all of these things at once. And when we do that, what we do is we get overwhelmed with how much is falling through the cracks and how much we're missing. And that tends to lead us to a place where we get really frustrated and we say, I'm over it. And we drop everything. We say it's too much. I'm just going to cocoon and watch Netflix for the next 15 hours and ignore the fact that the world even exists outside of this show. And that's not a healthy or productive place for us to be in. So when we intentionally choose our priorities, we avoid setting ourselves up to get into that overwhelming place. We know realistically, I can hold and manage maybe 2 to 4 stress balls at a time. So 2 to 4 tasks. So I'm going to look at what needs my most immediate attention. What do I need to hold right now? And I'm going to intentionally pick those things. And then what happens is I'm not dropping everything else that I have to do. I see it, I'm aware that it's there, and I'm making an intentional choice to do it after another task. The next time management skill I want to talk about is goal setting. And similar to the overarching idea of time management, goal setting is another thing that I feel is often thrown around with very little guidance on how to do it effectively. So when we set goals, we want to set what we call SMART goals. And SMART is actually an acronym for specific, measurable, arduous, realistic, and time sensitive. So we want a specific goal. If we make our goal too general or too broad, we don't really have enough direction to start working towards it. We want it to be measurable, so that way when it reaches the end, when we reach that end point, we know firmly, tangibly, yes or no, did I meet this goal or did I not? We want our goals to be arduous. That is to say, we want our goals to challenge us. We don't want it to be something that we're idly doing in the background or that we can do with passive attention. We want it to be something that pushes us, that gets us outside of our comfort zone and really gets us working. That being said, we want to balance that with our goals being realistic. We don't want to set a goal that's going to set us up to fail from the start. We want to make sure it's something that realistically we can accomplish. Lastly, we want our goals to be time sensitive. We want there to be a parameter or a time frame around it. We don't want our goals to be this ever looming thing that we may never reach the end of. So an example of a goal is I want to be a better student. That goal is pretty vague. We don't really have a way of measuring if we're a better student or not. It could be challenging. It could be realistic, but it's not time sensitive. So rewriting I want to be a better student to the goal of I want to finish my first semester of college with a 3.5 GPA. That's specific. It's measurable because at the end of the semester I can say yes, I have a 3.5 GPA, or no, I don't have a 3.5 GPA. I pick 3.5 based on my high school grades and how things went, and so I know that that's going to be a challenge for me. However, I also know that it's realistic. And it's time sensitive because I have one semester's time to complete it in. So that's how we set a SMART goal. And so if you have a goal that's more vague, look at how do you make it SMART. The next skill I want to talk about is scheduling and planning. Plan out your day. It doesn't have to be to the second or even to the minute. However, it's so important to have an idea of what you have to get done before you start your day so that it's not all of a sudden 3 o'clock in the afternoon and you have 4 hours of errands to run, but all of the stores close at 5. We want to make sure that we set ourselves up for success in the mornings by looking at this is what I've got on my plate for today. One action item or action step that has been tracked across many of the most successful people in our world, whether they're CEOs of multi-million or even multi-billion-dollar companies or renowned world leaders, is that they get up early every day. And I know I probably just lost a lot of you students when I said that, but bear with me. Whether you get up at 6 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, if you wake up 1 hour earlier every day, you gain the time equivalent of 15 extra days a year. That is a huge amount of time. And on top of having that additional time throughout your day, your week, your month, your year, you also avoid starting your day in a stressful place of being rushed because you're not rushing around forgetting things, you're not late to work or to class. You have the opportunity to start your day calm, cool, collected, and with a game plan. When we talk about scheduling and planning, one of the things we also talk about is keeping a to-do list on hand so that we can note new tasks as they arise in the moment. So whether it's something we keep in a planner or we have a notebook or use a listing app on our phone, having something with us at all times that we check regularly so that things aren't falling through the cracks. We also talk about, when we look at scheduling, creating or noting what our deadlines are. So if it's a paper where someone else has set the deadline, we know, all right, this paper is due in 3 weeks. Or if it's something that we're taking on for ourselves that we set the deadline for. We want to make sure we give ourselves a reasonable amount of time to complete any given task. And when possible, we want to reward ourselves when we meet a deadline, whether it's with a cup of coffee or a takeout meal from our favorite place, or even just a night off from studying. Being able to acknowledge, hey, I put in the work and I'm proud of myself for that. The last part of scheduling and planning that we're going to talk about is scheduling time to rest and recharge. Breaks are such an important part of maintaining consistent productivity. We cannot fully drain ourselves and expect ourselves to continue to be productive. I sometimes compare it to if we had a phone battery. We don't want to run our phone down to 5% and then not be able to do what we need to do. We don't want to let our battery get so low that instead of being productive, we're jumping from outlet to outlet between class just trying to get an extra little bit of charge. We want to plan, all right, my phone battery will last me through my morning classes. I'm going to go back to my dorm for lunch. I'll charge my phone. I'll take a lunch break, and then I'll have enough juice to get through the end of the day. We're the same way. We have to plan in those times to charge and to refill. So make sure that you're doing that. You can also try using interval timers. There's a lot of really cool apps out in the Play Store. Just a lot of them are free that set the intervals for you. So you can do, all right, I'm going to study for 30 minutes and then the timer's going to go off. I got 15 minutes to grab a snack, scroll through TikTok a little bit, and then I got another 30 minutes of studying to tackle. And when we use external apps like that, all right, I think we're back. Little bit of technical difficulties there. Some speaking difficulties as well, evidently. All right, sorry, where were we? So, interval timers. They help take that keeping track of time piece off of our plate so that we can focus more at our task at hand. The last time management skill that we're going to talk about is decision making. And a big part of decision making is learning to say no to others, learning to say no to taking on additional tasks. It's important that you know your limits and set firm boundaries when you need to, so that you're not spreading yourself too thin. The other part of decision making that I want to talk about is practice making difficult decisions with confidence. And the way that we do that is when we have a hard or difficult decision to make, we do our research. We examine the pros and cons of both sides of the decision. We identify potential consequences of both sides of the decision. And when it's appropriate, we can even ask for outside opinions. So that way, when it comes time for us to make a hard decision, we know that we're doing so informed, and we know that we're making a well thought out choice. So whether it is with working on increasing our accountability or improving our time management, it's important to start practicing these skills now. Even if you don't have major projects or lots of homework to do, practicing skills in a more mild environment or in more mild situations helps us develop the muscle memory we need to implement and fall back on these skills when things start to stack up and get more intense. When I talk to my kids in session about new skill practice, I explain it like being a professional athlete. So if you take a minute to think about, whoever your favorite team is, or if you have a favorite player, identify who that is. And I want you to think about, what does this person do, or what does this team do during the off season? And the answer to that is that they practice. They train, they run, they do weights, they do scrimmages, they practice. So that way when the season starts and it's game time, they know exactly what to do. And so the time to use a skill, the first time to use a skill, is not when we need it. It's before we need it. Because then we have the opportunity to troubleshoot difficulties. We have the time and the chance to personalize that skill to our style and our needs. So when it's game time, we know exactly what we're doing. So hopefully today helped provide some insight into how you can start to cultivate some more accountability and practice effective time management, so that as you prepare for these next steps in life, you're laying yourself a solid foundation of independence. Next Tuesday, we'll start talking about how you and your parents can come together to tackle the changes and embrace the changes that are on the horizon. Until then, I appreciate you taking a break with me, and I hope to see you back next week. In the meantime, take care of yourself and each other, and remember that we here at North Range are here to help. If you or someone you know is experiencing a behavioral health emergency, our crisis counselors are here to help. You can reach them at 970-347-2120 and press 2 to speak to crisis services. You can text TALK, T-A-L-K, to 38255. Or you can walk in to our crisis building at 928 12th Street in Greeley, Colorado. And I look forward to seeing you all next time.